question, will AI become ever a superpower? I don't know yet. But what I do know is that today we are spoiled already with AI techniques. Bottom right, you see the dancing panda. I don't know if you saw him before, but within AI, the dancing panda is quite famous because he's generated with DALL-E. He's generated based on just a text prompt. Bottom left, we have ChatGPT, and I'm curious, who in the room never used ChatGPT before? You should, advised. Or at least to ask, like, why I use it at home is, what will we eat this evening? Powerful answer, and ChatGPT can help you out. Other examples are, for example, top left, which is Sora, which is actually a text-to-video model launched by OpenAI. So the same company behind ChatGPT also launched a text-to-video model. And this is what we see today. And the main question is, what is happening? Why all the vibe? Why all the hype? And I strongly believe that we are in a next platform shift, right? Remember the days with cloud, with smartphones? Why do you need a smartphone? We have our regular phone at home. Why do you need cloud? We have our perfect data lake in our personal private data lake, or at least company enterprise data lake. Why do we need it? And the question is with Gen AI today still, and all of us are still discovering what Gen AI can bring, but also what AI agents can bring. And what are AI agents? Those are actually the components that allow us to feed, or at least drive into the direction of autonomous AI as well. And this is what I want to touch upon as well. Autonomous AI, what can it mean for us? I will bring an example as well and then translate as well to procurement for all of us. Right? Final quote that I brought, another one, Henry Ford. I don't know who's driving with a Ford, but this is like the inventor of that type of car. And if people asked him, like, what do you want? Or at least if he asked two people, what do you want? Back then, people would have said faster horses, right? Because they didn't know what the next shift could be, right? All of us, we are still in the dark still what AI can deliver, so we need to think beyond horses. We should think about the cars. Back then, we should think about autonomous AI as well. And from a methodology perspective, what we believe as well every single time that we are in interaction with our customers is we have a 5-stepped approach. I will not go through all of them one by one, but it could help you to really piggyback your train of thoughts on this structure. Because if you have nothing, let's say, AI-based, AI-feeded, you have human-only interaction with a use case. Let's say, for example, a self-driving car. Back in the days of Henry Ford, you need to steer the wheel. There was no servo wheel, so no powered wheel, how do you call it? So you need to turn a lot to turn the car. And then over time, it became AI assistant, lane assist, cruise control, adaptive cruise control. You know, the annoying thing that keeps you on your lane, that's like always doing the wrong thing. So this is also AI based on vision, but we also believe that, also looking at the trend in cars, it will become more and more autonomous. Self-driving cars, Tesla is really believing that a car should drive itself, right? And this 5-level approach will give you, or will bring your ideas to a higher level of autonomy, and will bring you a new perspective on how to cope with the possibility of AI, hence to enter Wonderland. And we are ML6. We are actually an AI boutique company that and our sole mission is actually to help our customers to navigate through that ecosystem of possibilities. And we want to do it together with you. So we want to guide you through all the possibilities and making sure that we can deliver value end to end. And I have to admit, we love to do it as well. So we have quite a team already. We are close to 100 people. This is just like one of a subset of the team. We love to do it. We are recognized to do it. And I'm quite proud as well to present you that message here today as well. What do we have from ML6 perspective as well is like a background story. And this is just to feed or at least to support my next slides, because in a few seconds I will show you an example. But back in 2019, we were working already with Gen AI. We were training back then a GPT-2 model, which was very small. Now we are a GPT-4. So things have changed over time. We have logo generators built over time. We once were in the news with Wim de Vilder. I don't know if you remember that one in 2020, give or take, or 2019, where Wim de Vilder was actually deepfaked with Lutfi, actually one of the colleagues, and suddenly he could talk Moroccan Wim de Vilder. So that was, back then, crazy new AI. Now it's boring AI, you could say. But today we are in 2024, and I want to show you the possibilities of today as well with a short demo, let's say. You could call it the proof of the pudding, but before we get to it, I really want to guide you through another methodology, let's say, to really structure your thoughts. So you have methodology number one is more like the 5-level approach. And the second methodology is really look into your use case itself, right? To give you one example, bottom left, sorry, bottom left, you have digital reformation, where we actually went from analog to digital, right? Remember the use cases, the online travel agencies. Wow, back then it was amazing. Now it's expected by the end user. Going right, autonomous reformation, no changes to the actual process. One example I can bring is the robots actually driving the Amazon warehouse. If you enter the warehouse, robots are going left and right to ship your packages from left and right. Top left, you see the digital transformation, where you actually change a process, change a product, change a methodology, a structure, by technology, by digitalizing. And this is, or one example at least, is Uber, right? They disrupted the taxi technology, they disrupted the taxi industry with technology, apologies, with actually a new way of thinking, a new way of approaching taxi, right? Or the taxi industry. And now we are like top right, autonomous transformation, to be defined still. Where can we actually change processes, think about changing processes with automation, with technology, and really get to that TBD use case top right. And in order to do that, I believe we need to shift our way of thinking, right? Because all of us, we are quite structured as a human being. We want to elaborate something in boxes. We want to put something in lists. We want to structure for our own train of thoughts. But what I believe is that we need to step away of our current way of thinking. And what we do today is we look at existing roles, we look at existing responsibilities, and we ask ourselves, how can we optimize it? But then you optimize in a local optimum, right? You need to think about what is the actual task at hand that people are doing, what capabilities are needed to perform that specific task, and how can we make sure that we analyze that, because the capability is bringing the value. And by looking in that direction, looking with that type of perspective, you can identify the areas to optimize for a global optimum instead of a local optimum. So this is really going from expanding beyond the roles and responsibilities that we know today, analyze what information and skills that you require to do the task at hand, cluster those to really identify like what are the subclusters of information that I can use, what are the subclusters of capabilities that I need to identify what is feasible, what is viable with technology of today. But not only with technology of today, it will also allow you to think about when tomorrow GPT-5 or yet another innovation pops up, you can directly translate the business value on your use case. Yeah? And this is what we actually did, proof to the pudding. I will bring a demo. It will actually show quite raw images, raw from a perspective, just like a print screen of a demo that we have built. But I want to show you following process, what we have done in product innovation. You can imagine product innovation of yesterday was having a lot of people in a room, be creative, a lot of post-its. Everyone could select his color of a post-it. You need to think, you need to be sharp for 3 hours, you need coffee, you need a toilet break, come back to that room, think again, reiterate on that idea, come back next week, reiterate on that idea, come back 3 weeks later, reiterate. A lot of time has been invested to come with average ideas as well. And the question that we had is, can we actually use AI to do that thought process for us and give us, the human being, a kickstart, right? And what we have done is actually, step one, is we looked at the world, let's say, or at least a proxy of the world. We did a trend analysis online. And there we asked the question, or at least we used that information to understand what are people caring about, right? What is important for us, for the community to build? What product do we need? Next step is actually we used those ideas, those trends, to actually generate concepts. We went from a list to, I think, 800 ideas generated fully by large language models. And what we did then is we identified expert profiles. So imagine And close your eyes if needed to imagine, but we actually built a large language model, and we gave it the task to act as an expert in a certain industry. This example was in the food industry, so we created an AI agent, an autonomous agent, to act as a food expert. Another one to act as a packaging expert. Another one to act as a food and health expert. Another one to, and so on, right? So we had a lot of experts actually giving feedback on those 800 IDs. I like it because of reason A, I don't like it because of reason B, and so on and so forth. And we actually use that information to improve the approved concepts, to really have a next iteration on those ideas, to come and end up with a concept statement that we can test to a consumer profile, or at least to a consumer audience, right? If you are in product innovation, testing with consumers takes a lot of time, and you need to hope that you have like a representable audience, let's say, to test your product. What we did is we actually built AI agents, autonomous AI agents, to represent those consumers. We identified user personas, and for example, I will show an example of the Baker family, and we listed the pains and the gains of the Baker family. We identified what is important for them, and we used all of that information to, again, give feedback on those concepts, right? We ended up with quite a nice result, but first I want to show you how it looks like, and I want to give you some more meat to the bone to really show you what it did and what it does, right? So the demo homepage, this is a demo actually that we built for one of our US customers as well, is we scraped 300,000 social media posts. We analyzed only 1,500 of them to actually come up with 10 trends. So the funnel is quite strict already. We just did it for demo purposes, and we used those 10 IDs to actually iterate on those concepts. As mentioned, the consumer profile, as promised, even the Baker family, we have the pains and the gains. The job to be done for that specific family was articulated in, let's say, a persona, a profile, right? Also, for the expert profiles, as mentioned, we list where they need to pay attention to, where they need to put emphasis on, and so on and so forth. So their task, their value, and what they should do, right? We have a few trends, and for example, we have a specific trend that experimental and promoting traditional cultural and ethnic cuisine and dishes is quite trendy. So we used those kind of ideas to actually generate ideas. In the ideation phase, we can select, let's say, the Baker family, what did we generate it from an ID perspective for them, and then we can look into every ID, every single ID in detail. So if you look in, it will scroll. If you look here, for example, so we have a concept, and it's called probiotic clusters. We have description, what it is, we have a target audience, we have the value that it could bring, the characteristics, and so on and so forth. So this is like the raw concept of which we have 800. Then we have the expert feedback, and here you see the expert is actually articulating positive feedback, negative feedback, recommendations, criteria, scoring on those criteria, giving it a final score to actually end up with a list of good ideas versus bad ideas, right? We use that information to further specialize it, or at least specify the details. It's like a loop, as mentioned. And then in the end, we even extended with an image, Gen AI generated, so no human effort there as well, to actually come up with a final concept statement and to ask feedback to the audience itself. Consumer testing here is the actual audience, and what we see here is the question, for example, product market fit. What do you like about the product? What are the dislikes? Why? Could you explain what are the reasons, what are the scores? Would you recommend it to others? Like the classical way of consumer testing is integrated in those kind of AI agents as well, right? And the remarkable result that we had was actually following a diagram, let's say. And I will explain for people in the back as well. What you see in blue are the AI-generated ideas. What you see in gray are the human-generated ideas. Top side, let's say, of the graph is a positive sentiment or a positive evaluation. Bottom side of the graph is a negative evaluation. And what was remarkable for us is or at least what was expected for us, was the right-hand side. The perception that we have is, yeah, probably it can generate a lot of crap and a lot of nonsense because it hallucinates and it's like very creative and not on point and it doesn't know our data. So that was expected, but what we didn't expect, actually, completely to the left, the actual best idea also came from an AI solution. And we had a moment of silence as well in the room when we showed this, like, oof, AI did this for us. And what we are not stating is that this is like the final product ready to ship, but it actually gave a new perspective to the people itself, the human beings who were used to do this project or process, to actually be inspired or even augment their ideas with some aspects of this specific idea. Ending up with a few 3 to 4 ideas where they believed that they could ship that product for a certain product audience. Right, so proof to the pudding. It was not a pudding, but it was a granola shake, in my opinion. So excuse me for that pun. But the question still that you could have is, what's in it for me, right? And I want to take you back to the stairs, right? Remember the 5 levels? Remember the way of thinking? This is actually what I tried to do, is I want to show you how we went to level 4, even 5, to really automate this process, to really have it AI generated. But also having more like, what are the skills needed, right? The expert profiles, the consumer profiles, giving feedback on it, those are the capabilities and the skills needed. And what I did as an exercise as well is translating that to procurement, for example. And what you could say is today, let's say AI doesn't exist. Today you have a human-only approach where you need to start with all the manual tasks to actually prepare for the procurement process. And there you could have like, okay, there's a lot of work to do. We need a Kanban board, we need a Trello board. What can we do to translate it? But if you think about level 2, question yourself, how can we use AI? How can we use, let's say, ChatGPT, but we can go beyond that. How can we use it to help us in writing our use cases, or at least our needs? How can we help? How can it help to articulate our ideas? How can it help in brainstorming? How can it help in the overall process of the initial steps of the assessment? But also think about the desk research. We have a question in the market. Who can help us? Option A is you do it manually. You start Googling and you start asking friends and colleagues and everyone, and you hope for the best solution. You have market studies. Question is, how much can it help us to really do the desk research, to collect literature and really make sure that we have a holistic overview of the market as well. It can also conduct interviews, for example, where it can go off script. We as human beings, we think about, we need to define a script and we need to make it really crystal clear on what to ask and what to score. But you can also translate it to a semi-autonomous to really have an AI agent help you in that process as well. And in the end, you could think about, you could dream about, I'm not stating that you could automate it all at once, but I really want to challenge you to think about the process that you're doing today within procurement and in which steps, for which capabilities AI can help you as well to support in that. And once you start with this exercise for procurement, you can do anything you want. You feel, for a few seconds, a god, because you can actually translate it to, for example, an M&A process. And we do quite some M&A as well, or we have customers in M&A as well within ML6. You can translate it to M&A as well. You can translate it to public affairs and policy, right? So you have a lot of ideas, you can have a lot of processes that you can actually put in perspective with this way of thinking as well. So I really invite you to challenge yourself, to trigger yourself, because I really believe that today, AI is the worst AI will ever be. And this is also what I want to say to you, is really think about it, and I really invite you to Wonderland as well, where we all together can discover the potential of autonomous AI as well. Thank you. Any questions? Do I still have any questions? I think I have time for 2 questions, and the mic will come to that person in the back.
Well, my question is, why did you not think in the first place on health? Because we are just out of Corona.
Yep.
So I thought that you should apply your AI knowledge immediately for health applications like monitoring on your smartphone the health of the people.
Yep.
That's important.
Yep.
That's the most important procurement we need now. I'm a little bit older than you, so I think more about health than you. Thank you.
Very valid question, and I assume everyone heard it through the mics. But indeed, health is like a key topic. It's also a complex topic because you are working with people, and the barrier that you need to take to innovate in health is way more difficult. And as we are at the doorfront of Wonderland, allow me to continue in that analogy, it's still too much unknown what the implications would be on human beings. I'm not saying that we are not exploring health and how we can help in health, but those type of processes are a bit more open for this type of innovation already. So it's not about not doing it, it's more about what is the right timing and when do you have the right technology to really accelerate in health as well.
Well, I can tell you that I have the right patents for that, for the monitoring on your smartphone.
Okay.
The only problem is that we cannot develop the software here in Belgium or elsewhere, except in Estonia, where they have digital health, personal digital health data needed for the deep learning algorithms. So in health, Europe is very far behind. And I try to convince our minister, who is now president of the Minister of Health, that he should digitize health all over Europe, but he's a little bit deaf in his 2 years for that, still.
Yeah, I need to disappoint you, I cannot help you with that, but I do agree that we as Europe should accelerate in innovation as well, because we have a lot of potential, we have a lot of brains in Europe as well, and we should use them. So I totally agree with that. All right, with that, I will hand over to Ruben. If you have any questions for me left, I will still be around in the coming hour, let's say hour and a half. But I want to give Ruben the opportunity to take his time as well to guide you through the practicalities of procurement. Right, Ruben?
Yep.
Here you go.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so thank you, Jens, for that interesting presentation on what the future of AI may or will hold for us. My name is Ruben VanCaelenberg. I'm principal consultant at Adestino. And I'll further build on what Jens just shared by explaining how you can manage the risk of using new technologies in both the public and private sector. First of all, AI is a classic story of technology-driven innovation. So there you have rapid technological advancements to solve existing or new use cases to improve efficiency of processes or efficiency of activities, as Jens gave a couple of examples of. But what we see is that in every technology-driven innovation, there's a constant field of tension between the dream, the promise, the vision, the sky is the limit, and the intrinsic uncertainty of then actually applying that new technology in your business, integrating it within your existing processes, within your existing IT landscape, your existing setup. And we see this everywhere at all our clients, be it in the public sector, down to startups, scale-ups, SMEs. And we developed a couple of methodologies to help cope with that uncertainty and to stay in control. And this is what I will share with you for the remainder of this session. The first methodology that we apply, and I also have a 2x2 matrix, I would be a very poor consultant if I didn't use 2x2 matrices, is value risk. So what we do here is assess the value of a use case, of a feature for a user. We ask the question, how important is this functionality for you as a key stakeholder? And we map that out against the technological or the implementation risk. How complex is it to build? What's the technology readiness level? What are the legal barriers, for example? I can imagine with health data that you have GDPR that comes into play, so it can get a bit tricky. But also, what's the expected cost? Now, as you might hear and understand, the challenge there is that there's a lot of unknowns, so you need a lot of experts in the room. You need a lot of experience, a lot of expertise. And we solve this by gathering a lot of people and get input from a lot of people. And how to do this in a structured way, we actually play poker. It's not Texas Hold'em or 7-card stud, unfortunately for some. It's planning poker. And you might have found the cards on your seat when you entered the room. Before you start playing around with those, I'm going to briefly explain how the planning poker moderation works. So it's a moderation technique where we ask the audience, like you guys, to simultaneously vote on a certain question, be it about the value of something or the risk of something. And we have a scoring mechanism. For value, a score of 0 means it's completely useless. I don't need this. I don't want to spend any money on it. And it goes all the way up to home run 100. I'd give you my house if you give this functionality to me right now. My house, my car, maybe even your pet. On the other side, you have the risk. A 0 means it's off the shelf available. I can buy it in the store. It's ready. It's done. There's no development needed. It's easy. It goes up to, if you score a 13, a 20, a 40, there's still quite some uncertainty. There's development needed. Success is not guaranteed. All the way up to mission impossible, being if I would ask you to develop a nuclear fission reactor the size of a euro coin in the next 6 months, that you would give a risk score of 100, nobody can do this. Now, the value that we get out of this methodology is by having the audience score at the same time, we see differences in opinions. If you have a lot of experts in the room, someone scores a 0, another one scores 100, you can have a very interesting discussion on why that one person says 0, the other person says 100, and that's what brings the value in PCPs, for example, pre-commercial procurements. That's where you understand where the actual risks are to develop the solution that you as a government organization require. I think for now that was more than enough theory, so if you could grab the cards that were placed on your seat. We're going to do a couple of exercises. Yeah, it's not a passive session for those that were hoping for that. Apologies. I have 2 warm-up questions, and then we have the real work. So let's start with tryout 1, scoring the value of an idea. Yeah, so the cards, there's a colored back, and then the scores itself are in light blue, making it very hard to read for you. The use case that I had prepared is train firefighters using 3D holographic headsets instead of field exercises. How valuable do you believe this would be for firefighters? Hold on with the scoring. It's most interesting if we score all at the same time. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Cards up, please. And I all see the back of your card, so that's making it very hard. If you could. Okay. Okay, very good. Perfect. I'm not going to evaluate the scoring. That comes next. I have another one to score the risk. A bit trickier one. Using large-scale sensor networks, this comes from a real project of ours, by the way. Using large-scale sensor networks to monitor real-time PFAS concentrations of below 10 parts per trillion in surface waters. How complex, how risky, how uncertain would that be to get this implemented within the near future? How would you assess the complexity of this use case? 1, 2, 3, cards up, please. And you can use the question mark if you have no idea what PFAS or sensors or parts per trillion are. Okay, very good. I think you understood the exercise, so let's score some actual use cases now. So back to AI. First use case, and I think Jens hinted on this one already, so people that were attentive might know where it sits in his 5-level framework. Using large language models, for example, ChatGPT, but Copilot and Gemini can do this as well, to support the writing of policies, procedures, manuals, offer texts, or tenders. How would you score the value for you or your organization if you could do this? 1, 2, 3, cards up. All right, that's kind of what I expected. Now, from a risk point of view, what would be the technological risk to implement this? How complex would this be, given the current state of technology and what Jens all explained? How complex would this be to implement? 1, 2, 3, cards up. Okay, very well. So I took my glass ball before the session, and I kind of mapped your scores already on my value risk model. this is where it should end up. This use case is just do it. From a value point of view, it's quite valuable. You can speed up the text writing quite significantly, while the risk level is quite low. So ChatGPT can do this perfectly. You don't even need to buy the license unless you want to enter confidential information. So it's just do it. People that are not doing this yet, are not using ChatGPT to support writing text, I do recommend you start doing it because it really speeds up the process. It's really valuable, and you don't need much implementation effort to get this done. Another use case, training a large language model, a DALL-E-like copy, let's say, yourself to generate pictures for your corporate website or your organization's website of people that were not there on photo day. Oh, they missed it. What would be the value for you or your organization? How high would you score this? 0 starting, it's quite useless. 1, 2 is, it's a nice to have, would be fun. And 100 is, you'd give me your house if I would give you this generator right now. Cards up? Yeah, that's what I thought. Now, how complex would you think this is to do this yourself? What are the risks you believe are associated with this? What would be the cost or the lead time to train this model by yourself? So you can't hire Jens to do it for you. You do it by yourself. How high would you estimate the complexity? Cards up, please. Some people are very, very knowledgeable about AI, and others are a bit more realistic. Very good. This is where I mapped this use case based on expert input. It's oversimplified a bit, but typically use cases on the bottom right, you shouldn't touch unless you're a research organization. Don't do this yourself. The immediate value to users is relatively low, while the risks and the complexity is quite high. Typically, you find PhD topics in this quadrant, research at universities or other research organizations. I think I have another example. I won't ask you to vote for the sake of time, but using a large language model to create a chat-based pocket calculator, let's say, to replace your phone, this one would be low value, low risk. Don't use AI for this. It's already solved. You can buy a pocket calculator in the store. Low value, risk, don't spend time on this. Definitely do not do an innovative procurement. This is not going to fly. And last but not least, the last use case that I have, using a large language model to monitor, continuously monitor billions of European subsidies that go to cost reimbursements for subsidized projects, as opposed to using the historical selective sampling methodology. This one sits smack where you'd have innovative procurement, pre-commercial procurements. This is the CATE project that Adestino managed. CATE stands for Continuous Auditing Based on Technological Evolution and Data Mining. The DM, we kind of kept it off to have a nice acronym. Now, what is CATE? CATE, as I said before, is a project where billions of European subsidies funneled through hundreds of projects annually are continuously monitored. The responsible auditing authority had the vision to use AI to automate this and to cover much more ground than you can do with selective sampling. And the risk, so the value is quite obvious. The risk stems from the fact that the checks done, they range from rather simple. You have matching invoice amount versus the amount on the declaration. That's quite straightforward. But you also have quite complex processing where you need to evaluate the context. For example, should this purchase, for which a reimbursement is claimed, have followed the law on public procurement? That's already a bit more tricky to do via an AI. So how did Adestino support this pre-commercial procurement? We first developed use cases, which are atomic descriptions of functionalities that a user or a stakeholder wants to see implemented. So you have a very clear description of who's the value for, who's the user. As a user, I can take an action, do something, and as a result, so that there's specific value generated, there's a specific result generated. Once we had that list, which we try to make as exhaustive and mutually exclusive as possible, we can start playing poker. And we do that in 2 steps. The first step is you score the value for the users. Together with the auditing body, we went through the use cases, scored their value, and then we organized the market consultation, where we brought together quite some experts to assess and understand the risks. And based on that, the result was a 5-year prioritized development and implementation roadmap, and it's currently ongoing, matter of fact. To show you or demonstrate a bit who we all brought around the table, so the market consultation for Kate, quite some logos. We brought together quite some local AI and audit experts, and Jens might recognize his logo on the bottom of the slide as well. So ML6 was there to provide valuable input during the session. That was the first step in Kate, where we helped get the risk and the uncertainty under control. But it didn't stop there. In the next phase, we applied 2 other methodologies or 2 other approaches to further control the risk. First one was set-based design. The second one is applying selective proof of concepts to further de-risk. Why did we do this? Because the model architecture was not solved yet. So there was still some investigation, some exploration needed. And that's where we applied set-based design. Set-based design, the prosaic way of explaining it is there's many ways to roam. When you apply set-based design, you explore a couple of them. You take the nicest parts, puzzle them together, and that's the best one for you. And you can imagine it's very context-specific. If you have a motorhome, the best way to roam will be very different than if you have a helicopter. Now, in this type of projects, what set-based design looks like is you generate a couple of extreme options. For example, a very monolithic setup, mainframe-like, if you have a bit of an IT background, versus a full modular setup where you have atomic models for, let's say, each use case, each assessment. You evaluate the performance of the different options that you generated, and then you take the best performing pieces that score highest on the dimensions that you identified, and that can be flexibility, transparency, cost, lead time, whatever is relevant for your specific context, and you create a merge. You create a merge solution that's best fit for your specific requirements, for your specific context that you're in. And then next, once we decided on the architecture, we decided to develop a couple of proof of concepts where, based on a limited set of data, we test a couple of the high-risk use cases. Can the model, in fact, correctly consider certain declarations where the law on public procurement should have been applied? Does this work? If it doesn't work, you iterate fast before implementing a full model, and you try again. That's how you leverage the proof of concept. So, in summary, on those 2 methodologies, value risk and also planning poker, of course, and set-based design, they help manage risk and uncertainty in virtually any innovation and transformation project. It's not only in pre-commercial procurements, which we've done in the public sector. For example, at CERN, we've applied these methodologies to manage the hybrid cloud PCP, but also at the Smart at Fire project, European project to develop smart personal protective systems for firefighters. There, these methodologies have proven invaluable. If we move to the private sector, we also apply those in any project that I've done. I've applied value risk and set-based design, be it in product innovation for an imaging technology company where they had a piece of intellectual property lying around, didn't know how to market it, how to build a product around it. We did value risk, we did set-based design, and now that product has been on the market for 10 years or so. Or for a food retailer, something completely different. We applied the same methodologies for a large-scale data warehouse transformation, where we also built an AI-based forecasting model to predict based on, for example, the weather, which products, which food products should be on the shelves. For example, if it's barbecue weather, they ship more barbecue products to the stores, more sauces, more meat. And lastly, for an electronics wholesaler, we applied the same methodologies to design and define contact center flows based on unified communications, Teams, Zoom, like technologies. In short, or to summarize, new upcoming technologies, for example, AI, but previously it was cloud computing, or 5G, or software-defined networking, They bring both opportunities as well as threats. But what I wanted to clarify in this presentation is that with the right methodologies, you can stay in control. You can leverage this technology in your organization without lagging behind, waiting too long till everyone else has gotten a head start and you're at the back of the pack. But also without having to take unnecessary risks, which could lead to costs exploding or the vision that you had never materializing. And that brings me back to my very first slide. The presentation still wants to. So AI, as any technology-driven innovation, has this constant field of tension. It's nothing new. We see it everywhere. And I just wanted to tell you, you're not lost in the uncertainty. There are ways to cope with this. There are ways to structure it, to prioritize, and to set the right roadmap for your implementation so you can get going and you can start reaping the benefits of this technology. And with that, that was the end of my session. I think there's still some time for a couple of questions. So if there are people in the audience with a question, I think there's a mic somewhere in the back. Yes. Anyone have questions? No? Okay, very well. Then I thank you for your attention.